Hello, teachers everywhere. This session will be on the teaching of the process-based writing to young learners. You know that this topic is very interesting to all English language teachers, specifically those who teach young learners, because as you know, writing is a very challenging task, and we all have problems when it comes to how to make it simple and how to make it simple and interesting to students. So today we'll be covering a lot of points related to the process of teaching writing to young learners. First, we'll be handling what writing is, why is it challenging, and the different forms of written texts. I'll be also touching on the writing sub-skills that we need to be aware of and we need to convey to our students. Then I'll move on to the main concepts or very significant concepts in the teaching of writing, which are fluency and accuracy and how they relate to writing. Afterwards, I'll be focusing on the difference between product and process writing and the functions of each approach of these two approaches. Finally, I'll be covering the stages of process-based writing. So let's get started with this warm-up question. What is the difference between Model A and Model B? So here we have two writing activities. This is Model A that we may give to our students, or we may find in our textbooks. And in this model, as you can see, we have a text, a picture of a giraffe, and then we have an activity or a writing prompt to asking students to write a paragraph of 35 words on the elephant. And then we have a rubric of what to include in the paragraph. Describe it, mention where it lives, what it eats, and what it can do. And finally, what do you feel when you see it? Well, so if I ask you to take a moment to reflect on this activity, what you notice and what you observe. Well, so what I observe is that I have a text that describes a giraffe. For example, this is a giraffe. It has 4 legs and a long neck. So here an introduction of the animal and then a description of the outer appearance. It lives in the zoo. It eats grass. It can reach high trees. It's an interesting animal. I feel excited when I see it. So here, this is a model of a product writing. I have a text or a model, and I want the student to imitate that model. After the student has a look at the text, I ask the student to do something similar, but about a different animal. So this is one way of teaching writing. Now let's see another way, which is Model B. Again, take a moment to reflect. And this expands over a number of slides. It's not one slide. So this is slide 1. Have a look. Okay, slide 2, 3, and 4. So this is the second model. So as you go through this this model and try to compare and contrast between it and the previous one. So what do you think? Or what do you notice? So here, if we analyze what we are seeing, we have a picture of the same animal. And here, the task asks me, look at the pictures and answer the questions. So your role here is that you are asking students questions, kind of brainstorming their knowledge, helping them to brainstorm their ideas. What is this? So I'm encouraging students to come up with ideas about what they see. The second picture or the second step Again, I have a number of pictures and a number of questions. What's this? Is it short? So here there is, kind of invitation for students to come up with a variety of answers. For example, this is a neck. Maybe another student may give you another answer. Is it short? Yes, it is. Some students may not know the word long, so you may find other students to provide the answer. You may give the answer yourself, but the idea is that there is a discussion. The same applies to the second picture. So here, a lot of questions, students come up with answers and they jot them down on a piece of paper or a sticky note. The same applies to this section. What are these? Again, a variety of answers. Students jot them down. Can the giraffe reach them? Okay, a variety of answers, and students write down their answers. And finally, after students have written down their answers on the sticky notes or the pieces of paper, you ask your students to use those answers to write a paragraph of 35 words on the giraffe, providing them with a content rubric. Rubrics are essential when it comes to writing because they, show students how far they are on the right track or not, whether they are on the right track or not. So they are very good helpers. And after providing your students with the content rubric like this, the name of animal, description of its appearance, where it lives, what it eats, what it can do, your opinion of it, what you feel when you see it. So these are the main points to be included or you want to see in the content. You ask students to post their texts on the wall. Then they review their texts and check the items they included. Maybe afterwards they switch places to peer review the text. Okay, and I mean by this that students have a look using the same rubrics at their peers' texts, checking for content, whether there's partners, their peers in the classroom followed all of the items or included all of the items or not. And this is very important because it gives students a kind of, observation. It helps them observe the content and be attentive to content. Okay. Finally, on another stage, you provide students another rubric, but this time on language and structure. So students exchange places, but this time they won't look at the content. This is not the stage to look at the content, but they will be focusing on another point, which is the grammatical mistakes or mistakes related to spelling, sentence structure, whether the words in the sentence are in the right order, whether the verb agrees with the subject, the articles are in the right place, problems with singular and plural nouns. So what you include in the rubric depends on the kind of grammar you teach or the kind of grammar you want to see in the text. So what do you think if you compare and contrast Model B with Model A? So what do you think? Actually, Model B shows the students what happens at each stage, and it breaks the whole task of writing, which is challenging and difficult, into smaller, manageable pieces. So students can, are given a chance to think and are given a chance to write, single sentences, okay? And afterwards, they made use of the sentences they produced to make a bigger text. In addition to that, they're given a chance to look at the content and to look at the grammar mistakes or the language and structure problems and to fix them. So what is that? What is the difference between these two models? Before going, through telling you the differences and in which occasions we can, use each of which, let's see or let's know what writing is, because if we don't know what writing is, we'll find a problem teaching it. So according to a paper published on ResearchGate, writing is the process of using symbols, letters of the alphabet, punctuation, and spaces to communicate thoughts and ideas in a readable form. And actually, this definition is kind of reflecting of what writing is. It is a process. So it is hard to, if my interest is in teaching students the skill of writing, it will be challenging for them to write a text in one shot, because as you can see, writing is a process. Students have to go through different stages and to know what happens at each stage in order to come up with a text, a readable text at the end that conveys and communicates their ideas and thoughts. And that's what we are shooting for in this session. How to make writing accessible and manageable, easy to handle for our young learner students. For answering the question why writing is challenging after all, there are main reasons why our students, specifically young learners, find writing a problem. First, they may either not have thoughts, enough ideas to write about, because thoughts and language are intertwined. If you don't have enough ideas about a topic, you won't be able to talk about it, or you won't be able to express it, whether in a spoken form or in a written form. Another reason why writing is challenging is the lack of vocabulary. The student may have enough, ideas and thoughts about a topic, but unfortunately, he or she doesn't have enough words to express those ideas. So here is another problem. A third problem is lack of ability to structure sentences and use grammar. Again, students may have enough thoughts, enough vocabulary, but they're not able to piece those words together to make a meaningful sentence. So working on those problems, again, does not happen at one shot. It needs to be, pieced and divided into stages. Okay. Again, related to the process of writing is being aware of the different forms of written texts. What the student is asked to write about. Bearing in mind that writing is a real world task, that in the real world, we are required to write, a variety of texts. And we have to teach our students what types of those texts are. So we may be required to write letters, or to write emails, or to write stories, posters, paragraphs, essays. We may even be required to write thank you notes or memos, notes, to write, invitation cards, congratulation cards. So those are different forms of what our students are required to write in the real life. Okay, from the different forms of the written texts that students have to be aware of, we move on to the writing skills. What skills or our students should be aware of, and we as teachers have to be aware of when we teach writing? Because again, writing is not just putting words together. it's, something beyond this. You can have a look at the two columns. The first column represents 7 sub-skills of writing, and the right column represents activities or tasks corresponding to those sub-skills. So what we need to do is try to match what activity corresponds to what sub-skill. Let's see this together. I'll give you one moment to reflect, and then I'll be doing it myself. Okay, that's fair enough. If we start with the correct punctuation, that students have to apply correct punctuation or the signs that organize thoughts and sentences in a sentence or in a text. And this depends on, what punctuation you teach. So which activity corresponds to this skill? So let's go through the number of activities and see which applies or matches the skill of the correct punctuation. Let's see together. Okay. Yes, so it seems that it's number C. This sentence doesn't start with a capital letter, and this is a kind of a remark on a text. The sentence doesn't start with a capital letter. So this has to do with the correct punctuation. Okay, now let's move on to planning. Which of these activities corresponds to planning? Having to do with, sections, dividing the text into parts and what to include in each part. Okay, it seems to be number G. Draw a map of the sections of your story. Like, for example, beginning, middle, and end, and what major ideas should be included in each section. So this has to do with the skill of planning. So students have to learn how to plan before they write. Okay, another skill is forming letters, or in other words, spelling. Spelling is highly momentous. So students have to learn how to form a correct word on the paper. So which activity has to do with spelling? Yes, so draw the letters of the word cat on a tray of sand. Here I'm focusing on spelling. I'm interested on showing students how to form correct and well-spelled words. Okay. Now, linking. At certain levels, I'm not talking about I'm not talking about KGs or, junior one, but maybe if you think of young learners starting from junior, maybe 3, 4, and on, we become interested in showing students how to connect ideas and link them together using linking words like and, but, because, when, and so on. So it's very important to highlight that point and teach students how to use connectors or linking words. So which of these correspond to focusing on linking? Okay, so it seems to be number D, how to connect the two parts of the sentence. Are they similar or different? Here to elicit their knowledge of and or but, for example, if those are the focus. 5 is paragraphing. And again, the idea of paragraphing grows as our students get older. So, for example, if you teach students emails, to write an email, a story, here we have to raise the idea of dividing the text into paragraphs, and that each paragraph has to handle a single idea or a single main point that needs to be developed. So the activity or Yes, the activity that may correspond to this, maybe. Let's have a look. Yeah. Look at the following email. Is it divided into paragraphs? If yes, are they in the correct order? Because, paragraphing has to do with logic, okay? The kind of the points that need to be, or the order of the points to be included at each paragraph has to be logically sequenced. So E goes with 5, using appropriate layout. And layout means how words and sentences, how the text appears on the page. And this, varies depending on the form of the written text, whether you are writing an email, an article, a story. So how sentences or the text appears on the page varies. So let's see. Put the appropriate opening expression in the correct place in the following email. This is, highly pertinent and highly relevant to emails because, as you know, um, when you write an article, for example, or a story, we don't have an opening expression. So this is related to emails. Okay, so now I'll be moving on to 7, editing and proofreading. So we have only one point left, which is once you're done, use the rubric to check if your email has any language mistakes. So as I told you that, looking at mistakes, whether these mistakes have to do with grammar or spelling, um, you know, has to be handled at the editing and proofreading section or phase of the writing process. Well, so having done that, we as teachers have to be aware of those skills when we teach writing, and we have to communicate that to our students. Our students have to be aware of all those points. They need to learn how to plan before they write. They need to learn how to apply the punctuation marks they studied in class, to use well-spelled words, to connect and link sentences, because there is no point using single sentences that have nothing to do with each other, or they are incohesive or incoherent. They are mismatched. So all of these points are highly significant. Okay, coming up to that point, we need also, let's remove the lines. Okay. Okay, so we need to raise our awareness regarding to significant concepts related to writing. The concept of fluency and the concept of accuracy. And your job as a teacher, teaching writing and designing tasks and activities for your students to write, would you focus on fluency at all stages or accuracy? Or would you focus on accuracy at all stages or fluency? So this is a major question, because you're not required to be accuracy oriented all the time. Sometimes at certain stages, you have to be interested in letting students put ideas on paper and just practice the idea of transmitting ideas into written words and sentences. And this is for a reason. Okay, let's first show, or let's first indicate what fluency is, okay, and what accuracy is. And fluency refers to, let's move this, away from these lines a little bit. Okay, so fluency refers to the flow of putting ideas to paper. Here, my focus is on letting students to transmit their ideas in a written form on the paper, regardless of any grammatical mistakes. I don't care whether my students make any mistakes, okay? Because your purpose is to help them write. Accuracy is the opposite. It refers to the use of correct. It refers to correctness. So my focus is on the use of correct grammar, correct spelling, correct punctuation, correct style, whether formal or informal, as well as the application of cohesion. And cohesion means the use of linking words like but, when, and, because, where, any connectives. And coherence is again a writing-oriented concept, and it refers to the logical sequence of ideas. Again, it's not a matter of putting ideas on paper. It has to do with whether your ideas are logically organized. Is it reader-oriented? Because why do we write? We write for other people to read, because writing is some sort of communication. Okay, so when you write, you have to consider that the readers or the people who read your text are able to follow your ideas. Okay, that they can logically understand your ideas. Okay, so these are the two concepts. The question is, when it comes to teaching writing, should I focus on both concepts? Should I focus on accuracy all the time? To answer this question, let's have a look at the different phases, or the four main phases or stages of the process of writing. Okay, at the very beginning, we start with the phase of drafting. The phase of inventing. So this is the first stage, inventing. And inventing, the purpose of this stage is to help students find ideas about their topic or the topic they're writing about. Because as I said, if you remember, the main reasons why writing is challenging, one of which was lack of thoughts. So at that stage, my focus is on helping students to come up with ideas. And here we have to stop at a moment, because coming up with ideas does not only depend on students' brains and minds, because some of the students may have no idea about what the topic is. So how come they would come up with ideas? So there are several sources you can help your students get ideas from, like, for example, providing them with different parts of different sources, like parts of articles, parts of stories, to help them get information from and then use the information in their own writing. So this is inventing. Students brainstorm ideas. Comes next the stage of drafting. And in drafting here, students make use of the ideas they came up with at the stage of inventing, and they start to make sentences, to put them in sentences that correspond to the plan they started at the very beginning. So at the stage of inventing, students plan for their text. If you ask them to write a story, so they have to draw a map of the sections, what to be included at each section. Okay. Then they come up with ideas that correspond to each section. So this is inventing. Afterwards, they make use of all of this to write a text. start organizing all of those ideas in complete sentences. They start applying grammar, applying punctuation, applying linking words if they were taught that. After that comes the stage of reviewing, and reviewing has to do with meaning only or with content. Don't ask your students to review grammar and content at the same time. This is distracting. So you focus on one at a time. So the meaning or the content is done on its own or at one stage, and then at the final stage, we have a look at the grammar, the spelling, the punctuation. So at the stage of reviewing, I provide my students with a rubric that I customized or specially designed for the purpose of writing that specific text. And then I provide my students the rubrics and ask them to check whether their texts include those items or whether those items are included in their texts. Okay. Afterwards, the final or afterwards, at the stage of editing, I provide my students with another rubric. Do you remember the activity we started with at the very beginning, which is Model B? This model follows those stages. So at the stage of editing, I provide my students with a rubric that focuses on grammar, spelling, punctuation, language, and structure. So students will be focusing on whether they applied those features in their texts or not. So here, this is the stage where you can apply peer assessment, because students can have a look at each other's piece of work and see whether the language is applied correctly or not. And then you can have a discussion and give your own feedback so that students come out of this class, with a complete idea of how to go through each stage and how to produce a text, the creative process. Let's go back to the question. Which aspect should I be focusing on, fluency or accuracy? If we consider the stage of inventing, I want students to come up with ideas. So here I'm not interested in accuracy at all. Don't touch on any grammar mistakes at that stage. Just let your students write down ideas in whichever way, no matter how many mistakes they made. Your purpose here is to help students put ideas to paper. So here the focus is on fluency. I want to encourage and induce the flow of ideas and to help them express those ideas in sentences, regardless any mistakes. But when it comes to drafting, here I encourage students to focus on accuracy. Try to be accurate as much as you can. Okay, pay attention to the words and the grammar you are using. Okay, because you'll be looking at this at the end, at the stage of editing, because again, at the stage of editing, my focus will be on both fluency and accuracy, because I'll be spotting any grammatical mistakes they've made, and then I'll be encouraging them to correct those mistakes. Okay, so this brings us to the end of this session. Basically, process-based writing is very interesting and is very important when it comes to making writing simpler. And when you are interested in teaching students how a text is produced, how the creative process goes. And at the same time, if you are interested in making writing simpler, so you have to break the big task into manageable chunks. Okay, so there are certain activities or tasks to help students focus on inventing. There are other tasks to help students draft, other tasks to help students learn the process or the stage of reviewing, and finally the stage of editing. Maybe in the next session, I'll be sharing a variety of activities to apply at each and every stage of these 4 stages. So to wrap up what we did today, we focused on the sub-skills, the writing sub-skills that you have to be aware of, and you have to teach your students the different forms of written texts that you need to show your students and be aware of. The main concepts of writing: fluency, accuracy, cohesion, and coherence, and at which stage should I be interested in each of these? I mean, fluency and accuracy. Okay, and the significance of using rubrics when it comes to focusing on content and focusing on language. So thank you so much. I hope you've benefited from this session. And at the next session, I'll be sharing a variety of activities to help you apply and teach your students each and every stage of these stages.